Yo, what's going on, Hivers? I like doing these music chats, especially over the weekend. Um, yeah, I came across the recent Dean Del Rey podcast. Excuse me. He's a comedian I'm a fan of, and he has some of the guys from the band White Reaper on. A band I remember pointing my phone at the radio and talking about them on a Steemit blog because it was before the pandemic. It was in early 2020. They had a record come out the very end of 2019, major label debut, and I remember talking about how, oh guys, I this is a band that I actually got their record in 2015. They have two indie records, independent releases, and I think they're gonna, be pretty popular. I think they're gonna blow up. And then obviously they couldn't tour. March came around, like a month later, and they got dropped from their label. Um, and now they have a new album out 4 years later after, being dropped and not being able to tour and everything. Um, but it's interesting because I remember actually talking about this band in early 2020 on a Legacy Chain post. Um, maybe it was even on Hive after the fact, and I'm just remembering it wrong. But in 2020, I talked about it. And I remember, hearing this single on the local alternative station, the local rock station, rather. And yeah, just a good band. Um, Not really a punk band, this is just kind of a like an indie rock band. And I really dug I'm just pulling it back up here. I think the recording might stop if I pull this up. Hopefully not. So their album White Reaper does it again. Their debut full length in 2015. I think the song Pills was the first song I heard. And I remember hearing it on some podcast was talking about it in 2015 or like late 2015. And I definitely did these as daily jams years ago. Um, they had an album in 2017, also on an indie label. The song Judy French was the first one I heard, and I got that when it came out. And then I randomly saw that they had a major label debut coming out. The album You Deserve Love, 2019. It had to be like December or November 2019. Oh, and by the way, their 2017 record is called The World's Best American Band. Definitely just like a kind of a garage band, not a punk band. Just I could have even seen them being in the same scene as like the Strokes or something, but definitely different. And I just gave their new album, their fourth full length, Asking for a Ride, a quick listen because I didn't even know about it. I did check up to see if they had anything new going on in 2022, and I didn't see any releases. So cool to see them on a new label with a new album. I see it's Electrical Records, so it looks like they were picked up by another major label. Um, oh, that's weird. The label information is missing from the 2019 album. That's really weird. But yeah, it's definitely a different label. Um, they were on Atlantic or some big label. And I see here that that album came out October 18th, 2019. So my timeline might be off by like a month or two. Um, but yeah, I like this band a lot. So I guess I'll do three songs from each record. Um, you know what I'll do? I'll do five songs from the first two records, and then I'll do five songs from the new album or the 2019 album. Um, and I'll note what they're from, but definitely an underrated band. I know I focus a lot on older music. I talk a lot about 90s punk. I talk a lot about, synthwave from 2011, but also a ton of, post punk, new wave from the 80s, from the late 70s, a lot of Seattle stuff from the early 90s. Um, it's getting to the point where even a lot of my favorite bands from the 21st century are bands like The Kills, The Strokes, a bunch of punk bands. They're all from the 2000s. So here's a band that's putting on new music. That's a band that actually didn't have their first release until 2015. So a band that's just, come out in the last 10 years. Um, I would guess they probably formed, a good few years before that, but, definitely after 2010. And they're a good band. Are they groundbreaking? Are they the Rolling Stones? Are they the Ramones? Are they, Joy Division? No, but they're a rock and roll band, and I think they're worth checking out. And I'm definitely gonna support them and buy the new record. Um, I'll be honest, I'm on streaming services, and I pay that $10 a month to have unlimited streaming. But I think there's certain bands you should support, especially given that they, were ready to make a run commercially, and you know, um, not that it's the worst thing that happened in 2020. I'm not saying that at all, but clearly, they got, their dreams were tarnished, and clearly the fact that an album's coming out 4 years label, clearly they were label shopping, and it was not an easy process. So great to see them with a new album out. I was not even aware of it. I'm really glad it came out January 27th. Um, have not heard a single, but I'm not really listening to the radio like I was. I would very often throw the local rock station on. Um, I get a station from Danbury, Connecticut, right over the border into New York. Very, very small station, generic rock station. Um, but yeah, they do play like newer stuff, as well as a lot of older stuff. So, when I am in the car, I'll probably throw that on just to kind of stay on top of it. And yeah, I really like this band a lot. So check them out and let me know what you think. Again, I'll put the first five songs will be from their first two albums, 2015 release, 2017 release, and then I'll do five songs. I'll probably do three songs from the new album. I'm gonna listen to it for about an hour straight through, because I have not really been exposed to it. And maybe I'll put in a clip from the Dean Del Rey podcast. Um, and we'll do a proper band spotlight, and maybe I'll make this a weekly thing. Um, I'm trying to find my footing with doing some kind of music kind of content regularly. Um, and I think this might be the way to go. Spotlight a specific band, discuss it, grab some clips from, an interview, do a clip of the day type thing, and then actually have their music. So vlog, clip of the day, daily jam kind of format, but where it's just a music vlog. And I love music, so I want to find ways of incorporating content that people actually want to check out and support. Um, and I think I'm going to try to do that every Saturday and Sunday. So I have two posts like this, but I'll see how it goes. You know, I guess I can do it anytime. But yeah, I definitely want to just not just talk about the financial stuff going on. I want to branch out, and music's a huge part of my life. It's actually painful to play guitar. I have such horrible nerve pain in my left hand from my neck injury, but so yeah, I just don't see myself starting, an original project anytime soon. Although I'd like to at some point do something. I do write songs, I do write melodies, even though I suck really bad at guitar at this point. I would like to do something. Um, maybe I'll even try to do some interview stuff, in the future. But yeah, let me know if you like it. Let me know if you dig the music chat. Leave a comment below and check it out. Peace. She's jumping in here in the middle. So I ended up letting, I grabbed a couple clips from the podcast, fair use and everything, but, I'm just going to kind of let it play out a little bit. So, if you're bored, just cut it off early. But, yeah, I actually really, really like this record. It's been about an hour since I recorded what you just heard, and I really dig it. It's just kind of a band that's, clearly influenced by the Cars, by Cheap Trick, and they've been on tour with Metallica, and they were on tour with Pearl Jam, so clearly they have a lot of respect from, some elders of rock, and pretty cool. Um, so yeah, here's a couple clips from the Dean Del Rey podcast, Let There Be Talk. And there'll be a link to check out the full episode. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy. Peace.
It was said. It was really good.
Oh, I'm so glad you guys came down. And come down anytime. You live up the fucking street,
That's
dude.
true.
I'm there all the time.
Yeah.
So you guys start writing it. So what? Airbnbs and Zoom? How does this happen?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like I think we were exhausted. We felt like this last record kind of got, left in the dirt a little bit. And so I think there was a little bit of we just needed like a latency period to kind of get some refreshment in our brains. And, I think we were all doing our solo things. And, I was playing guitar a ton. I know Tony was just making like little scrap demos and stuff like that. And the label, I think, was pushing like, this is a great opportunity to write some shit. So we were like, all right, fine. And about, October of 2020, I guess, we all linked up in Rogers, Arkansas, I think it was, because it was like a halfway point between where I was in Texas and where the other guys were in Louisville. So we drove like 9 hours because we weren't getting on planes at that time. Nobody was doing it, I guess, really. And yeah, we rented this weird like Hobbit house Airbnb thing in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, and we just hung out there for a couple weeks and just made a ton of demos, and a couple of them stuck. Primarily the title track from the new song, and then we went our separate ways, and we kind of just did iterations of that for like a couple of years. We would write on Zoom and kind of share screens. Tony would have little seeds of ideas. Then we met up in Nashville at some point, wrote some songs, met up in Louisville, wrote some songs. It just kind of was like a gradual process. And then we ended up recording the record in November, trying to record it in November of 2021, I guess, was it? Yeah, 2021, I think, in Seattle. And we kind of had this realization that a lot of these songs we had over-touched or maybe overcomplicated through some of the, I guess, mechanisms of writing, like over Zoom. Whenever you're sitting there virtually looking at like a Logic project or something, and you're like, let's add a 17th guitar to this track, and then you get in the room and try to play it together, and you're like, oh, this is really hollow without all the excess bullshit we threw on this, over the computer. And so I think, that recording experience, we kind of realized, all right, we gotta write some songs quickly that we can, just throw together and have like just the power of us in a room kind of come out on the recording. So we wrote like 4 or 5 more songs, some like latent demos. There's a song called Fog Machine on there that Tony had a riff for. Yeah, it's a really fun one to play, and kind of built that out. Bozo, Pink Slip, Crawl Space, a couple of the other songs, and just like rehearsed them a week before we went and re-recorded the record in Nashville with our buddy Jeremy Ferguson at the studio called Battle Tapes. And we just did it really fast. We had like 3 years, and then in the end, like in 2 months, we just wrote half the record and then just like threw it together because I don't know, I think keeping the energy quick and like immediate and simple was kind of like this long roundabout lesson we had to learn for this record. And I think we'll write differently from now on because of that.
So you started tracking the record in Seattle and it failed?
Yeah, we did like 10 or 12 songs, something like that, and it just didn't, when we listened back, there was just never that moment of like, yeah, this kicks ass.
Different producer?
Different producer.
Who was it?
Her name was Jen DeSilvio, and she's a nice person, but I just think we weren't in the right space. I don't think we were like, I don't think we communicated on the same level. We kind of have this weird, I guess, internal language between the 5 of us, and we all are pretty. We all contribute a lot of ideas to the process, and so it's like whenever you get somebody else in there that's not necessarily of the Hive mind, I think it can be kind of polarizing for them. And I think it was a combination of that mixed with just not having the right material that we were super stoked on and feeling like it was gelling.
Yeah, my favorite tracks and a lot of other people's favorite tracks off this new record came literally like a week or two before we went and recorded them, like on the second session. So like
Right.
everything that we really like about this, a lot of what we really like about this record came like right before we recorded the second version. So it was just kind of like, I think it ultimately came down to like us and the songs we had at the time too. So
Did you guys choose her, or did the label recommend her? And what did she work?
and then that was number one alternative radio. And I don't know how much that affected sales. I don't really know the numbers. I do know that every band couldn't tour, and that's one of the biggest things is like when you're touring, you're reminding people that you exist. So we just couldn't, it was harder to remind people that we exist, you know? Like everyone was just at home. So
Yeah, and also these bands were putting out records and they were just fizzling, which is weird because you think it would be the opposite. Everybody was just sitting home. You think they'd just be listening to records and stuff, but I think everybody was just kind of scatterbrained. Like, I got no time to take in anything. I might lose my house or my job or my life, you know?
while all that was happening, it was like, all right, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And it's like, okay, live stream. You want to sell tickets to a show version of a live stream or a live stream version of a show?
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know if that's who we are. Like, I don't know if that's really. Then we were getting into the nitty gritty of like, would I enjoy that? And yeah, it was just a weird time. We're like insanely lucky to be back to where we were, you know.
We didn't put out any music over COVID, and a lot of people did. And I don't know if that was a consequence of just like, since everybody was locked in, they just, you know, people made a glut of music. Like there was that Iggy Pop COVID song that he wrote that was hilarious. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah.
And there's just like a lot of stuff coming out because it was almost like people were just sending out the refuse because they had nothing else to do, and it felt like it created this massive glut of music. And I agree with you. I would have thought that people would probably be more interested in listening to music because they had nothing else to do, but at the same time, it just felt like everything that came out just got kind of swept, like for whatever reason. I don't know. So I was kind of glad, you know, we took a really long time writing this record that we just came out with, and we wrote it over COVID in a lot of different forums, over Zoom sometimes, and like at Airbnbs across kind of like the Midwest and South and stuff. And it just took a really long time, but we were so concerted also and concerned with like not putting out a COVID record. So I'm kind of glad that we waited until now to put it out when it's kind of like all, you know, it feels like it's in a natural cycle again. And people kind of have that, like, it doesn't feel like this was just the shit that they, you know, created when they were locked up and now you're dealing
Right.
with that. But although some of it is that, you know. But
Well, I think that this record is, I mean, for me, man, it is fucking fire, your new record.
Thanks, man.
It is, first of all, the title track, Asking for a Ride, that thing, man, it has some, and I'm going to go on all the way out and say this, some of the best right hand since I've heard since Hetfield or Gary Hole. There is a galloping bounce in there that's heard on old thrash metal that is fucking fantastic.
That's all on the bass, baby.
yeah, right.
But you know what I mean? I was really concentrating on the riff, and it's like I can't even.
There's a couple of them because there's like the. Yeah, it really does sound like circus
But there's
music.
that one that does like the you know, it's a gallop.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was kind of it was like the first thing we wrote whenever we got together after like a year of COVID. And it was, I mean, we were just listening to Metallica. That's the truth of the matter. And it was like, Tony, we were watching like Metallica documentaries and stuff. And this was like even before we did that Metallica thing. We were just kind of like in that headspace. And so we were just like, this would be funny to just try to make a little thrash song. And it was more just like a kind of bit to us. But then it just ended up being really fun to play. And we kind of like dress it up with those insane solos and stuff. And now it's like, yeah, what we open the show with, because it's just fun to play.
Oh, it's fucking fantastic song. And it opens the record, and immediately I was like, oh, wow, we got a record here. And it really was killing me because I was listening to it. Funny Farm is another smash rocker that's like speed metal, semi-speed metal, but with some Cheap Trick flavor in there. So that thing kills, and Bozo kills. I'm like, wow, this is like, it's just for me being from the Bay Area. It's just like I understand the flavors,
Yeah, there were a lot of flavors. I mean, it was because we wrote so many different songs over that time of, the last 3 years, and we just ended up kind of going with a lot of the ones that were the most fun to play in the room, because we realized, I think, on the last record that some of those songs, were kind of written in a demo form, and then we had to reverse engineer them to make them feel good live, and some of them never even got there really, so we didn't always play a ton of that record, after the fact. And this was a massive premium placed on, like, let's play the ones and record the ones that feel the best for the live show. And so that's kind of why I think those heavier ones, like, made it through the chamber a little bit. And yeah, I mean, a lot of them are just, especially I think the ones that people gravitate towards the most are really kind of just like experiments and things that like make us laugh and that are fun to play. Like Funny Farm is an insane song.
That's a great song.
It was almost like a joke song. They were like, let's just do it. Let's like use this one because it's fun to play and all that. But
I mean, that flavor of the record, those songs I mentioned are just, to me, are just fantastic. And also me being such a huge Metallica guy, what is the era of documentary we're watching? Were you watching like the making of the Black Album or that the Justice Tour one, or were you just kind of?
We watched the main ones were the making of the Black Album. I think it's like a 2-part documentary where you're like on tour with them, and it's so funny. We love it. We love it so much.
What's the monster? Is it some kind of monster?
That's a great one too. I mean, people give him on Some Kind of Monster because they had the psychiatrist there, and it's like, hey, fuckface. You probably even haven't even had a relationship for 2, 3, 4, 5 years or worked at a job. Try playing with 4